Good evening. Welcome to Expat Insights. I'm your host Raju Mantian. This is another Sunday, but this time this Sunday is not a Sunday, much more of a fun day, because at Expat Insights tonight we are breaking the pattern. Instead of inviting expat, we have invited an expat couple this time, and the couple here with me today is husband and wife Nix Martinez and Johannes Blay. Johannes Blay is from Germany, while Nix Martinez, though a Filipina, was born and raised in India, Thailand, and has just come back to the Philippines. So stay with us and let's come and meet Nix Martinez from Mabuhay Publishers. She's a writer, artist, and a TV host of the Living Asia channel, and Johannes Blay is a kiteboarder. So good evening and welcome to Expat Insights.
Good evening. Thank you for having us.
Good evening, Johannes.
Good evening.
So tell us a bit about yourself. Nix, you first.
I'm Filipina.
Okay.
Although I was born here, I was raised in Thailand, India by my parents, and later on I went to work in East Africa. After meeting and marrying Johannes, we've been in Europe for a while and have recently come back to the Philippines.
So do you feel like a cosmopolitan, global person, or do you feel more Filipino?
Definitely a lot of everything, but the majority is Filipino.
Filipino.
Yeah.
All right. Tell us a bit about your life growing up in Thailand. How different was it from life here in the Philippines?
As far as being an Asian country, I think the weather is similar, the people are similar, but Thais have a very strong culture factor about them. The language is different. I had to learn to speak, read, and write it, and dance, Thai dance, cultural dances.
The one with the fingers like that?
The very long fingernails, about that
Yeah.
long.
You still can do it?
Out of practice.
Okay.
Growing up in Thailand was very fun, very much colorful every day. But you get used to living in the traffic of Bangkok. And
All right. And so not much difference compared to Philippines?
weather, no. People a little bit different. Definitely the language.
And
but a lot of similarities.
Your whole family was there, mom, dad, and siblings?
That's right.
Yeah? What did dad do in Thailand?
My father was an English teacher in the military as well as a mission social worker. And I also went back much later to continue doing work with underprivileged children in Thailand.
Did mom work too in Thailand?
She did, but she was more of a teacher and schooled us because we were homeschooled as kids, and mom spent every day with us teaching us, besides our Thai teachers who taught us the language.
And you are now managing editor for Mabuhay,
That's right.
and you paint, and you also did some hosting in the past.
That's right.
And social work. Let's start with the social work you've done in the Philippines. Tell us what you've done here.
In the Philippines, I started first doing small volunteer work at PGH with my friends, helping kids with cancer. After that, I moved back to Thailand and I started teaching art for children that were physically abused in a home for these children. And one way that we would help them to get over their bad past or the sad memories they had was to introduce art, dance, and because I have a background in art, I was a volunteer for this. Later on, I went to Uganda. I did radio programs as a radio host with Radioactive Productions, and I did radio because it was a way to talk with the people that were calling in to ask questions about hope, about love.
This was in Uganda?
This is Uganda.
And they spoke English there?
Yeah.
Everybody speaks English?
Very
or?
well, very
Yeah,
well.
they do.
Yes.
How many years did you spend in Uganda?
About 3.5 years.
We have pictures of you in Uganda, and we'll flash them when we get a chance. But tell us about life in Uganda. What does Uganda need, and what were you able to do to fulfill that need in Uganda?
There are so many needs of the people of Uganda, and while I lived there 3.5 years, it was very easy to be consumed by the needs of these people. I realized that as a volunteer, I did not have the money or the resources to help them, but I was an artist, and I could at least highlight their needs and their plight. So during my time in Uganda, besides working in radio and as a volunteer in various orphanages, I also painted. And I painted pictures of the people that I met there who needed help, because this was my way to give them a stage and a spotlight to be known. And after a while, people did know about those who needed help and were able to help them.
How did Ugandans take to you? You being an Asian, a Filipina, What's the culture like in Uganda towards foreigners?
They were so warm and so friendly. I learned to hitchhike in Uganda,
Okay.
and I felt safer doing it there than I
Really?
do here in Manila, yes. And every time you go out, you would see people of different cultures, colors, and race, you know, having a drink together in restaurants. So very warm and friendly. Kids were always coming up to me and asking if my hair was like this or if I was born like this.
How big is Uganda, and what are the cities in Uganda? What's the city life in Uganda? Because from where we sit, people who have never been to Africa, Africa's like a huge big jungle, but I'm sure there's some kind of urban life there.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
And each African country is different than the other one. Uganda borders Kenya, which is very different. There's Rwanda, which is a whole nother world. Going to South Africa is like going to some cosmopolitan city in Europe, some places of it. I lived in Kampala, and Kampala was also a contrasting city of very, very rich and very poor and not so much of a middle class. But my time in Uganda was the best time in my life because of the experiences that I had.
The pictures show it, and I hope they flash it soon. The pictures show that you kind of had a different experience over there.
It was. We
Yeah.
learned to live with less. Some days we had no electricity.
Wow.
Some days we made trips like this one up to the mountains of remote tribes where we carried enough water rations for a week and only that much food and gas. And we learned to interact with people who had
There,
very,
the
very
pictures come
little.
out just now, yeah.
That's them. This is a
Yeah.
tribe that I met in Uganda
Yeah.
called the Ik tribe.
And you're teaching them painting?
I'm telling them stories while the adults were having a meeting because they
Right.
wanted to meet to discuss their problems and issues, and we had some counselors there as well. So my job was to keep the kids happy.
Seems like a great experience there.
This picture is,
Thailand?
this is here. This is
Oh.
in the Philippines, one of the indigenous tribes here. And this is
Is
during
that
my
you in
time
the
in living
center,
Asia.
The biggest girl in the center, is that you?
Yes.
And where did you meet this handsome young gentleman called Johannes Blay? Did you meet him in Africa, Thailand,
I
or
just
Philippines?
found him somewhere. No.
He was lost and you found him?
I went to Bicol on a trip to do my
Right,
travel
right.
show,
Yeah.
and that's where we met. Diet.
So ladies and gentlemen, this is Johannes Blay. Johannes Blay, we have 1 minute to break. Can you tell us a bit about how you met this lovely lady? We'll take the break and then we'll come back and talk to you about kiteboarding and the stories that you have written. So 1 minute for you, Johannes.
Well, I was sitting with my friend and business partner Mike, having a beer, and pretty much complaining about the lack of wind that day. And Nix showed up with her travel show colleagues, cameras, and just took her 5 minutes to talk us into going out and trying to kiteboard with no wind, and even showing those failed attempts on TV later on. Yeah.
I had no idea about kiteboarding, but I thought if we're going to, promote this place and there's kiting here, this is something to feature. And he's like, there's no wind, but I don't know what that means.
So no wind that day, but a beautiful breeze came along and flew away with you.
It's a good way to put it. Yeah.
All right. So ladies and gentlemen, this is Johannes Blay and his lovely wife Nix Martinez. We'll take that break. You are on Expat Insights, and we'll come back and talk to Johannes about kiteboarding in the Philippines because that's his passion and that's his business. I'm your host Raju Mandian. Stay with us. Alright, welcome back to Expat Insights. So that was a clip of kiteboarding, and we are going to talk to Johannes Blay. It's not Blay, it's Johannes Blay, and he'll tell us about kiteboarding. But before he talks to us about kiteboarding, let's find out who he is and what is he doing in the Philippines. Johannes, what brought you to the Philippines? Of course, the reason is obvious, but before that.
Before that, I went to the Philippines to Boracay to do my instructor's ticket, and just being in Boracay, I found out the Philippines got 7,100 islands or something like that, around about.
You said this is
And,
paradise. This is my dream come true.
I just thought there must be something else out there rather than Boracay, and I went out traveling and ended up in Bicol, met my later on business partner Mike, and then left the Philippines, went to Egypt to teach kiteboarding.
Whoa.
And got an email from Mike. He's going to open up a school there, and do I want to come and join him? in order to set up that school. So I did, got stuck there for almost 2 years with him, and now it's all up and running there. He's still doing it.
Before you tell us about kiteboarding, because I'm going to probe you about kiteboarding, tell us a little bit about life in Germany, growing up, and compare it to the life in Philippines. I mean, what are the pros and cons? What are the good things about living here, and the good things about living back home?
Well, I think one could go on for hours about that, but of course life in Germany is a lot more structured, a lot more strict. People have a lot more, how do you say, the everyday life is a lot more structured, yeah, than here. It seems to be a bit more haphazardly, but also more exciting, and yeah.
And
I grew
Philippines?
Yeah, Philippines just slightly chaotic, but it's more fun in general, one can say, yeah, to me. And yeah, I grew up in East Germany.
Your first impression of Philippines when you landed here, your first say, oh, did you land here and say, this is heaven, or did you go, where the heck am I?
Well, the airport in Manila is not heaven, that's for sure.
wasn't heaven when you landed in Manila?
No, but of course Boracay is nice. I remember the first flight. I just went to the domestic terminal and said I want a ticket to Boracay, and then they sold me one. I hopped on the plane, and bolt of lightning must have struck the plane or something. A huge bang, and like ice crystals out of the aircon raining down on me. People screaming.
In the plane or outside?
In the plane, yeah. That was the
first
air
conditioning in the plane?
Yeah, it came out of the, you know, those slots up there.
And that was a handmade plane. We made that. We make those in Bicol.
Probably, yeah. So yeah, looking out of the window or like across the mountains, and then ending up in Calibo because they couldn't land in Caticlan. But I had no clue, but I knew from the map that Boracay is supposed to be only 8 kilometers long and 500 meters wide. And like looking around, like, well, this is not Boracay, that's for sure. Where did you end up? And yeah, like slowly finding out how to.
So you've been here now 10 years or less?
No, on and off for 4 years.
4 years. Have you picked up any Tagalog? Kamusta ka?
Kamusta ka, I can say.
Sige lang, okay, mabuhay.
Something like that, yeah.
Right. Now, having been born and raised in Germany, and how and where did you pick up kiteboarding? Were there beaches in Germany, or was there some other set of skills that you knew that you adapted to kiteboarding?
Well, what we did was a lot of snowboarding those days.
In Leipzig? That's why you come from?
No, Leipzig is not in the mountains. Yeah. You have to travel for like 6 hours or so to the Alps.
Yeah.
And our host there, he had probably one of the first kiteboarding magazines and showed it to us. And we were all like, wow, that looks cool, you got to try that.